We the people, ABC Amber TV, Ambazonia Broadcasting Corporation. The voice of the voiceless, the voice of Ambazonia, connecting the world from Africa. With untold stories, Africa's best.
Good evening, fellow Ambazonians, ladies and gentlemen. You're welcome to this very important broadcast. We are just a few hours away from a so-called celebration that was done by mostly CPDM surrogates globally. And Yaoundé, with their intention, were trying to show to the world how successful Mr. Biya has been in office. Unfortunately for them, they met a serious attack from disgruntled Cameroonese, La République du Cameroun citizens in France. We understand that most of those who celebrated across the Cameroons were intimidated or obliged. Some were bribed. But that is not new to us because they have one of two or both strategies. Is either they are intimidating or they are manipulating. Everything they want, that's all they know. They do not understand anything that has to do with dialogue. But is that going to be the focus of our discussion this evening with Barrister Tim Besa and Barrister Fru Johnson? I don't think so. We're going to look critically on a very vital aspect. Early this morning, the papers from La République du Cameroun, particularly this paper I like to read for you, captioned this Le Jour. It actually captioned Paul Biya doit résoudre la crise anglophone. And according to the caption, that is a statement from Felix Agbobara. This is someone who a few days ago was supposedly talking for the peoples of the former British Saudi Cameroons. And when you want to match words and actions today, you want to match his current reaction this day, then you would like to ask yourself, What is happening? Was it just a lip service 5 years ago or 6 years ago? Was he actually in belief or disbelief of the things he said a few days ago? These are very vital questions. Our caption has raised some controversy. Amazonians have reacted to it differently. And I think that is why we have this discussion so that we can explain. Are we for the rhetoric or whatever is called the Anglophone crisis? As an individual, for those of you who have been watching me, you know that I don't believe that Southern Cameroonians are Anglophones. If we were not supposed to be speaking English, we would have still been Southern Cameroonians. And that's why sometimes associating British Southern Cameroons is for record purposes and maybe for legal arguments, which we're going to expand. I'm not going to waste a lot of your time. Right after this break, I will get Barrister Fu and Tim Besea so that we will break it down, decode it, and explain our position as a people and mostly as a government statute. Good evening, Barrister Team and Barrister Fro. You're welcome to this very important broadcast. Fortunately, we are all in the same platform, and I'm sure you would have seen the argument out there. Straightforwardly, that's what we have to talk about. I believe you both understand some basic French, and I wouldn't have to translate this to you, but perhaps this may be translated to our public before we get into the literature review, the use of certain words to push an agenda, which is Chris Anglophone. In other words, the Anglophone crisis. There was a time I wrote to this, I made a comment in 2020 under the post of this Cameroonian musician or a Southern Cameroonian musician, Dav Askia. After the Kumba massacre, they had a hashtag on Twitter and everywhere. They're trying to sell this hashtag, and the hashtag was End the Anglophone Crisis. And I commented in their group and I said, you cannot end what does not exist. A lot of them did not understand. Some argued. And when I had to explain to them what I mean by what Cameroon is calling Anglophone and the fact that whatever is happening now is a misrepresentation, if you would categorize it as an Anglophone crisis, some understood, some doubted, some stayed silent. Today, Agbobala has resurfaced the discussion, and I think it's important for us to educate our people when it comes to the words. Why Cameroon is intentionally using the word and avoiding words that are legal. Maybe I should start with you, Barrister Fru, and welcome. Good evening.
Thank you, Paddy. The word Anglophone, you know, if you go to YouTube and you see one of my shows in Douala, I said it and I said it clearly. I am not an Anglophone, and we are not Anglophones. If you choose to call yourselves Francophones, that's your business. We are not Anglophones, we are Southern Cameroonians and Bazonians. I've made that clear to the Francophone public. Well, it's not only the Francophone public that watches Equinox, Afrique Media, and all that exists in Douala. But the word Anglophone is rather disingenuous, because I don't know who they call Anglophones. I don't know who they call Anglophones. And they themselves know that we are not Anglophones. We are the Southern Cameroonians who joined them by, I don't know by what means, that our forefathers got us to join them, and we became West Cameroon, and they became East Cameroon. I don't know by whatever appellation, I don't know where the appellations came from. But I like to say this, Paddy, before we get into the subject. Agobala is a young lawyer that I've worked with. When I was lead counsel for Ayuktabe, Agobala was in my team. He never said a word before the judge, but he was always there. And he gives the impression to everybody that he knows a lot, but he knows very little. Because if he knew, he would not make the statement that Paul Biya should solve the Anglophone problem. If that came from Agubala, then he has told the world that he is not as competent a lawyer as we thought he was. It's a good
That
human
could
rights.
just be. Don't you think?
It's a good human rights fighter, but I don't consider him intelligent enough to know the difference. We are not Anglophones, and he should know that Paul Biya has no power to solve this war of independence. This is a war between the La République du Cameroon and the Southern Cameroons and Bazonia. And this war is orchestrated by the French, and La République is fighting as a proxy for the French. The day that Macron decides to end this war, it will end. The day that the other world powers who have an interest will bring pressure to bear on France, that is when France will solve this war. Until then, like our president said, we don't have an option but to fight and win. Because
Now,
if we lose this
Barrister Fro,
war,
I'm going to get back. Barrister Fro, I'll definitely get back to you on that. But Barrister Team, this is where I want you to start I'd like you to start your discussion. You just heard what Barrister Fro is saying there. And Cameroon is intentionally staying the word. Now, Agbabala also says that Biya should come and end it. And he uses the word, if at all. I know what he's referring to, but then I also know that as a lawyer, he understands the power of words. What do you think is Cameroon's catch, limiting this whole thing with language? Because they want the world to think it's a language problem. They have written it in their books, in their articles, everything. They want the entire world to think that it is a language. What do you think Cameroon intends to achieve?
Before I deal with Cameroon, let me first of all deal with what we do wrong all the time. And let me take you back a few minutes back. Before this segment, there was a segment that went before this, where our great man, UN, was analyzing issues there. He was talking about Choyaba, Akwanga, all those things that abandoned the war. Let me take off from there. You see, The problem we have as Amazonians right now is that we begin to bring people who have become irrelevant. And let me go back to
At the
what
forefront of our discussion.
yes, let me go back to what UN said. You mentioned all those people. Those people, including Mfongalam for SCNC, they had a different focus. They never contemplated war in their lives, even including Sisiku. They were not war leaders. They thought that we would demonstrate and that people would cave in. That did not happen. In fact, the SCNC that carried this story for a long time had this his slogan, the argument of force, not, not the force of argument. So they didn't believe in war. As late as 2017, when Sisiku came out to declare what he was declaring, he didn't contemplate war. They had never tasted war. And when faced with war, they become irrelevant because that was never part of their own agenda. And so, Choyaba, when the war started, he thought that he could just go and hide in Mokete plantation, take some money, eat, and then run away. Akwanga believed that he could go down to Ghana and negotiate, get some money, and the thing will end. Bohebet believed that well, he could make election online, get a prime minister, and he will end the war. Now, the only person who ever contemplated war, who saw war coming and prepared for it, is Sako. The millions that Sisiku raised, none was ever intended to go and buy arms. Now,
It was
so
to
they never
pay for
contemplated.
lobbies.
Yeah,
For
yeah, they
lobbies.
became irrelevant. And let me get back now to your question. Uh, I don't think Agwambala is stupid. Now, what is wrong with him is that he has not realized that he's irrelevant. And I hope he's following me right now because I've talked to him privately. I've called him. A few days ago, something circulated on social media, right with us here, written down the importance of special status. That took us back. Agwambala was the chairman of the Special Status Commission in the in the Ghana National Dialogue. He produced that document. But before that, Agwambala had told Yawande, if you do not revisit the constitution, you will never see Cameroon as it is. What was his goal? It was to get a federation. Even in the Grand National Dialogue, he went there. The rest, nobody even looked at them. He married the special status. It has gone nowhere. So in terms of war, what Agwambala says is totally irrelevant. I told him this privately when I called him. And I reminded him, Agwambala, you used to give some private lectures in the University of Boya. They struck out your name, not because you did anything, but simply because you taught a lesson they do not want people to learn. You were fired. And for the record, Agwambala became important. Who elected he came there into the forefront because he was elected president of FACLA, Faculty Lawyers Association. I'm a member. I voted for him. He replaced Stanislaus Ajong. So he's not a man I don't know. No. I mean, I know him. But we still continue to talk to him thinking that he still wants to be relevant. No. If Christian Toomey, may so rest in peace, was still alive, he's irrelevant because his perception has changed nothing. Back to your question. You say, Yaoundé would never want to not to refer to us as Anglophone. That is totally irrelevant. Maybe some of us don't know, and I'm sure Paddy you don't know. This word Anglophone thing was magnified in the University of Yaoundé. I went to the University of Yaoundé, and there was a hall there, they call it 700, where 700 students entered. It was such a rowdy place. If somebody threw down something, bam, oh, they will cry Anglo, Anglo, Anglo. It was a mockery. They knew there were people that would speak English. They knew that we came from British Southern Cameroon. They mocked us with that name. But when the Anglophones, called them just Anglophones, stood up one day and said, as Anglophones, we want our own university. They resisted, but they gave it. Even though they have changed it to something else. They resisted. They knew what we were talking about. When the very Anglophone stood and said, look, we can no longer mesh with this nonsense of baccalaureate exams. We won an examination board. They fought us. They killed some of people. People were tear gassed, but they gave it. What they call us is immaterial. It is not because they don't know. They know exactly what they are doing. They are trying to get the own colors to suit them. So that is the background. To give me a second, please.
That's fine. But I'm getting directly. We've now
Hello,
established.
hello.
Um,
Yes, I will go. I will.
that whatever Bobala is saying is definitely a
He said,
fact.
don't go back.
That has
Uh-huh.
actually been established.
So,
But
so I
then,
was trying to say
No,
this.
no.
Uh,
Let me
give
say
me,
this.
please. I was trying to say. Okay, sorry.
Let me say this. Yes, Paddy, let me say this.
go ahead, please.
Agbobala, when he came out of prison, he made a triumphant entry into Boya and went and kneeled before the governor. That is on record. The video is there. Agbobala tried to open it to do a private practice. It was not coming. He tried his hand at teaching at the university. I don't know when Barrister Tim left Boya. Agbobala up to now is not a regular, he doesn't have an active law practice. He's more of this, he has established something that is making him comfortable, and that is the human rights organization that he runs.
Organization.
Yes, Agbobala should have known better as a lawyer, a scholar, because he has an LLM in law, and he has taught in the University of Boya and was dismissed because of this crisis, this war that he calls crisis. If I saw a caption from Agbobala saying Paul Biya should solve this war, I wouldn't quarrel with him. A simple, down to earth lawyer would call it war.
Now
Because that is
you're
what it
taking us
is.
to the place. You're taking us to a place where I want us to go to. But before we even get to that, from the analysis you've given, are you by any means insinuating that Agbobala's utterances are conscious and a calculated attempt to foster his agenda or the negotiations he made that led to his release?
Exactly. That is what his declaration to me seems like. Because he should have known better not to call anything Anglophone crisis. Because that's what Francophones are calling it. Why should a prominent Anglophone, I mean a prominent Ambazonian lawyer in Boya should be calling this war the Anglophone crisis? Because I am not as privileged as Barrister Tim to call my enemies and talk to them. I will not talk to Agbobala Cameron Kamson because I know him. I know that he is a man who does not. He has no principles. Because I've worked with him. We hold a meeting for defense of Ayuk Tabe, and Agbobala will sit in that meeting and will say nothing and do nothing. It's like he was coming to fulfill a mission. And then today, the caption on the Les Jours is Biya must solve the Anglophone crisis. If Mr. Agbobala had been reading at all, he would know that this war was brought to us by Mr. Biya at the instructions of the French. Look at where he was coming from. From what you call France Afrique conference in Abidjan, and removed a piece of papers from his pocket and read a declaration of war against us. And they term it Anglophone crisis. And intellectuals living and working in Ambazonia will want to promote that thesis. If it is not for his own personal benefit, what it is. Because our people fighting on the ground don't call it a crisis. It's a war. Or at best, a conflict. A conflict between two parties. And Paul Biya is a proxy fighter for the French. And he cannot on his own end this war. That's what I'm saying.
I don't think any one of us on this panel can agree any less with you, Barrister, through on that. Now we've established one thing. There is nothing like the Anglophone crisis. But before we even crush on that to get into what Agbabala is suggesting that should be ended, which is the war, I'd like to remind us that Mr. Biya was actually appointed before he became Prime Minister, was appointed by Ahijo to head the commission that was to investigate the Anglophone problem. So they created a problem, narrowed it down to language, because a few days ago, you were not with us, Barrister Tim and myself went into the historicity and legality of this problem, stage to stage. We went through the plebiscite, into the referendum, into the cessation of La République du Cameroon from the Faith Union, and saw
1984.
that in 1984, and saw that it is a problem that has to do with the annihilation and the assimilation of a people. And they continue to narrow it down to a language problem. So I just wanted us to have this background. Perhaps, Barrister Tim, you may want to comment on that as we move into this next phase. So it has been established that there is no Anglophone problem, and therefore you cannot make the wrong diagnosis, even as a medical doctor. That's common sense. Provide the wrong treatment and expect a solution. So the hashtag that you're having on your Twitter account, on your Twitter accounts, and everywhere, insinuating an Anglophone crisis is just making some noise. Ambazonians are bigger than that level of manipulation. Please, Barrister T.
Again, I've started my contribution by saying that we'll bring irrelevant things here for no reason. So let us go to the Jew, the newspaper called the Jew. He said it's not a new newspaper that's been there for a long time, but it's not even the first. There was a newspaper in Yaoundé there, popular in Yaoundé, called the Herald. It was published by late Bob Fobbin. He was a journalist. He published that paper for a long time, and the paper was devoted essentially to what they call Anglophone problem. So it's not because they call it Anglophone problem. You must go behind and find out why is the Jew even saying it? Why is he even bothering to quote someone else? Call it Anglophone crisis, call it Anglophone war, call it anything. The Jew is reporting because they are now realizing their brothers too are dying. They are suffering because of this so-called war or crisis or whatever thing they want to call it. So what they call it is immaterial. What is it is what it is. And then, if he's quoting Agbombala correctly, Paul Biya must solve this problem, wherever the case. I think if he said so, it simply means that he doesn't even understand the problem. We have nothing against Paul Biya as a person. I've always said, and I insist, that the problem that we have as Ambazonians, as former Southern Cameroonians, as former West Cameroon, is not with, it started with Ahijo from day one. It is not, uh, it is not Paul Biya who abolished our institutions just starting from 1966. It was Ahijo. It is not Paul Biya who conducted the referendum. It is Ahijo. So Paul Biya has simply continued. If you take away Paul Biya and put Kamto, whatever they call him there, he will behave the same. It is not because they don't know. The Francophone politicians, people of La République, take them collectively and put together. They reason the same way as far as this issue is concerned. They want us to be part of them. Not very much because they love us, but because of what they will get out of it. By their own analysis, today in Cameroon, the next powerful politician they have is Kamto. Kamto came to Canada not about 2 years ago. And we refused to receive our own boys simply because they wore a uniform which he did not know. Does Kamto know this thing? Kamto know this thing most of it, more than some of us. Kamto,
Now
if,
you see the
yeah,
contours.
Kamto.
I
No,
just want
let me
to
finish.
interject there. Let me just permit me to interject. You see the contours and the others, like the Joshua was saying, they're actually positioning themselves for consideration. And this leads me to what was happening up north, I think yesterday, when they're celebrating their so-called 40 years of power. And there's a crowd, hungry crowd, that has been attracted out, and you find them endorsing the leadership of Frank Biya. That's a discussion for another day. I just thought this aside is important for us to tell Amazonians that people like
Okay,
Campos that know the truth about
let
our
me finish my
story
point.
would
Let me finish my point.
pretentiously ignore it. Go ahead.
Paddy, let me finish the point I was trying to make. You see,
Yeah.
Kamto, who is supposed to be the next powerful, most powerful politician over there, he refused to receive our people. But he's a public figure. Kamto, I give him credit for knowing our history. If he truly worked on the Bakassi case at the Hague, then he knows these things to his fingertips more than most of us have even
He
read.
doesn't know that.
In 1996, it was Kamto who suggested this hidden program in their constitution, a special status hidden somewhere. So they know those things. It's not because they don't know. No, they know those things more than some of us know. They're just being collectively dishonest. As I was saying, put all of them together, Francophones are the same. But they're even mentioning it now only because, at the very least, some of them realize that their brothers are dying, they are losing the money that they are getting. So would that be a distraction to us? No, I don't care about that. Whatever Agwambala said, I said it has become irrelevant as far as this struggle is concerned. He was in Yaoundé. He did not even deliver on his federation. All of them who were in Yaoundé during the Grand National Dialogue, they did not even make the Yaoundé to change its program of not addressing the form of state. They did not even as much as do that. And that's where Yaoundé was so stupid. Yaoundé have been smart. They would have realized that they are not called the Grand National Dialogue to discuss Anglophony. If there were 500 people there, 400 were Francophones. You would have just say, okay, put it there. And then you put it there, you bring it there, they'll vote you down. They'll
Yeah.
vote you down, you do nothing. So it is not because they don't know. No. They are fighting to end the war. Awambala is thinking that he should end the war. Everybody is thinking to end the war. But we are saying that you cannot end the war without going to the root causes of the problem. That's the most important thing. That's been the reason for all this Grand National Dialogue, Canada 1, Canada 2, Canada 10. So what
And
Agwambala
we're
says
going to get
is
the,
everyone in
we're
this
going to get
struggle.
into the ongoing Canada series towards the end. But maybe Barrister Fu should make an interjection there.
Look, Paddy, I don't buy all this, all what we're discussing now. I don't buy it. I have made from the beginning of this show. I made a statement that only France will be able to end this war. And let me start by bringing the genealogy of this problem. 1959, Ahijo signed an accord cooperative. Accord the cooperative with the French people before they were given independence on the 1st of January 1960. Our joining La République du Cameroon did not matter much to France. In fact, France was not really hot about it until in the 1970s, maybe 1970s to 72, large quantities of oil were discovered in the Gulf of Guinea. And what did the French do? They called Ahijo to Paris and told him, you have to end this federation thing so that the accord de coopération that we signed should extend to the southern Cameroon. Otherwise, we will not have a legal basis for laying claims to the oil in the southern Cameroon, Ambazonia. And that brought about the referendum, so-called fake referendum of 1972, when their so-called federal constitution in its Article 47 clearly stated that no law or no procedure, no law should be allowed to compromise the federal nature of this constitution. It was violated openly because of oil. And since then, France has been exploiting the resources from the southern Cameroons openly under La République du Cameroun. Like I said last time, La République is stealing our oil in complicity with France and those who are buying the stolen goods. Now, let me come back. They gave us a name of Anglo just the day we joined them. And any intellectual living and working in Ambazonia should know that we are not Anglos. We were never part of the French territory. We were never part of the French Cameroon.
We're Southern Cameroon.
We were Southern Cameroon's Ambazonia. And for a young lawyer, because I know Lejoux, I know even the editor-in-chief, he quotes everybody correctly from the headlines. Agbobala actually said that. And that is where I tend to disagree with my senior colleague that Agbobala is not stupid to have done that. He is. Because
even if
yes.
Yes, I want to follow up with that. But please, I'd like to follow up with that. Okay, go ahead.
Even if he's intelligent, he used that word Anglophone crisis to further his stand on federation. And I consider Agbobala, Monzo, and others as the enemy.
The worry. Why would they narrow down the problem? Or actually, because even by their definitions, there is no Anglophone problem in the Cameroons. It is true that when we're growing up, those who spoke English or the English-speaking population was discriminated upon, especially when they go into offices, administrative offices, or Yaoundé. But that is not the problem. That is like the consequence of the problem, where there was inequality. Now we have all agreed on this panel that the root cause of the problem is not the diversity in the language, because how do we have problems because of our language? It's not it. It's because there is no respecter of the right of the other. And what is the cause of it?
Can I finish my thought?
Yes, go ahead.
Listen. Agbobala was the chairman of the special status during the Grand National Dialogue. That makes him my enemy. That makes him the enemy of the freedom of the people of the Southern Cameroons and Ambazonia. And he's not alone. There's Simon Munzu. I will not readily sit anywhere and pick up my phone and call them, because I know that they have taken a stand that is unshakable.
Yeah.
Why would I be talking to an enemy to influence me, or for me to sell to somebody who has taken a stand that is unshakable? I know Agbobala, he has taken his stand. Even when we were before the court, he would not want. I didn't want him to take the floor because I could not vouch for what he would say. Okay. So I am saying that these are cooked up. These are cooked up phrases used by our enemies to prevent us from having this war declared as a conflict, an international conflict. We have been struggling to get it declared as an international conflict in the International Red Cross Society, and it's not going because people promote this thing and say and call it a crisis, or whatever we can call it, crisis or
Anglophone.
conflict
The
or
worst
whatever.
part of it is not
It's a
even
war,
even
for
if you
heaven's
want to
sake.
call it a
It's a
crisis.
war.
The worst part of it is the word
It's a
Anglophone
war.
that is very bad. Yeah.
It's a
Okay,
war.
Paddy, let
Let's
me
not get carried away.
Now
let me
we
a little bit
agree
structured.
I'm getting back to you, Barrister Team, please. We agree on the fact that the appellation is a mistake. Not just a mistake, a calculated attempt to narrow down the real reason why we've lost 5,000. Why you're reacting to that, Barrister Team, I want you to tell me or to respond. Because from what Barrister Fru is saying, Bia definitely cannot even end the war that he declared. So, can you also agree with that? Can
Now,
Bia
this is the
end this
point.
current
I
war in
don't care who,
Amazonia?
I personally don't care who ends the war. The war is there.
Really, really.
And they would fight the war to the end.
Mm.
But this is the point. I started my presentation by saying that people become irrelevant. It is not because Agwambala causes an Anglophone problem that the war is going on. No. Agwambala is not responsible, for example, for the creation of the Bilingual Commission, which is a whole institution, which Paul Biya created to narrow it to language. It has been there for 3 years. Has it worked? No. Musungi is the headman of the Bilingual Commission. He has made so many trips to Bamenda, to Boya, left and right. Has the Bilingual Commission worked? No. They themselves admit it has not worked. The Bilingual Commission was meant to promote the language, all that nonsense. It has not worked. They are on the regime. They tried, they could, for years, they not started today. They opened bilingual schools in every single village to think that they could just promote some English and French. It did not work. That has become irrelevant. I still insist on that. So what the Jew or any other newspaper reports about an irrelevant Agwambala, as far as this struggle is concerned, I don't want to challenge his credentials as a lawyer or not. If Agwambala had taken the stand in the court in Yaoundé and became the world's best legal professor, law professor, and presented any case there, he would not have won. Would not have won. Because the whole trial was a charade. It was not based on the expertise of lawyers. So these people have become irrelevant. Wasting our time talking about them is irrelevant. They can say anything. It is not because they call it Anglophone problem that has not ended. What the French did in 1959, signing the agreements left and right, as of today is 2022, they realized that it has not worked. I had a friend who attended the joint Nigerian Cameroon Joint Commission that they were holding in the 70s and 80s. And he told me that they went to one of those meetings. He was a translator. Francophones were discussing in Garawa, in a private room, that, well, you know, this oil in Victoria, in Limbe, they just discovered that they should better exploit it, tap it to the finish before the Anglophones ever think of going away. So it is in their blood. They know what they're getting out of us. But unfortunately for them, who have discovered those things, I've said here many times before, knowledge is not their preserve alone. You and me know those things. So they are not going to use that nonsense anymore.
This is the point I want us to get. If you noticed, we are not discussing the individuals, we're discussing the agenda. And it so happens that it comes from individuals like Agbobala. The question now, we've agreed on one thing. There is nothing like the Anglophone crisis. It has no bearing. Can the war, which they are implying or supposedly should imply, can Bia end this war?
If Bia, now let me finish. If Bia as an institution, as the presidency of Yaoundé, wants to end the war, they can end the war. It's not just a question of desire to end the war or wish to end the war. There are actions you take to end the war. And let us remember that 2 years today we have been singing, address the root causes of the problem. If Biya regime say, okay, let us go to the table and address the root causes of the problem. Maybe on that table, this 1959 agreement will come up as a cause. Let it be Biya, let it be Mr. Frundi, which is in the palace in Yaoundé, and accept the reality that the root causes of this problem is not the language. Let us go to the table, address the root causes of the problem. The case can end because we will be there. There will be only two parties. Right. Where it is convenient, where it is accepted by Paul Biya, come to whoever is sitting in the presidency in Etudi. Where the French like it or not, they only help them when they want the help from them. So they can. The people who are dying. I've not seen a single French soldier die in Cameroon. So the French don't feel the same pain like the ordinary Garawa guy, the Alman Betua. So can Paul Biya end the war? Yes, if he does the right thing.
Barrister Fru, please.
I beg to differ with my senior colleague. I have been reading, just like he has been reading. The French consider all the minerals underground, on the ground, and in the air to belong to them until they say otherwise. That is their call de coopération. They are the only ones that can end this war. You see, Biya went to France and misspoke. And that got the French a little bit rattled. When he said they have tried to assimilate us for years and they have not succeeded, he was speaking the truth. But you know what? It was against the interests of his masters. Biya alone, Biya on his own, I say this and I take responsibility for saying it. Biya will be unable to end this war, even if he wanted to. Has any of us ever asked the question why the Swiss-led process never took off? It is not Biya, it's the French, because they know that the people, their proxy does not have a case, and they cannot go to the Swiss-led process and lose. Because if going there means that France will lose openly to the world. And they did everything to discourage Biya from considering going to that table in Switzerland. Biya had given his green light. Listen now, Biya had given his green light for that process to go on. But the French did everything to stop him. Look, I don't care what anybody thinks. This war is the French organized war, but it's been fought by their proxy. And if the powers that be in the world put pressure on France, this war can end. But Mr. Biya on his own, with his junta now, because he himself is a vegetable, with his junta now, cannot on their own end this war. I take responsibility for saying that.
Are you insinuating that even the declaration on the 30th of November 2017 at the airport was based on pressure? Because some political pundits, even in Yaoundé, have acknowledged that Biya's declaration at the airport on the 30th of November was ill-advised.
It was ill-advised by Cameroonians, but in the French, he came from that conference in Abidjan and read that thing from his pocket. Listen, you have to watch these francophone politicians by their body language. Biya brought that from Macron. They met a few minutes before he took off. I'm telling you that the French, as long as the French are concerned, this war will not end until, like I said last time, we drag them into mud.
Yeah, we'll get to
Because
that.
the French are
Aspect
pulling
of what
the
can
French are
make
pulling
us
the
to
strings.
end.
The French are pulling the strings from behind because they control the Gulf of Guinea. If you look at those companies that are exploiting oil in the Gulf of Guinea, the French have the last share, second by the Russians. And you don't tell me
Yeah, but
that the French have an interest to end this war. They will, if they don't end this war, Yaoundé itself cannot end this war.
Okay, I've
yeah,
said
please, Vice
many times. I've said many times before. The war will end. I don't care who ends it. But this is the point. The 1959 agreement was not only with Cameroon. They signed
It
the
will
agreement with
end
all
when
the
we
French
make it.
colonies.
When we make it, it will end when we
Excuse
make
me
it.
now. Excuse me. They signed the same agreement.
We are not going to wait for La République of France.
Let me make my point now. They signed the same agreement with Chad. They signed the same agreement with Mali. They signed the same agreement with the Ivory Coast. But where are they today in Mali? When during my short stay in the Ivory Coast,
because the Malians have stood up
let me
like
finish my
one
point.
man. We have to stand up
I'm
and
coming
end
to
this
that.
war.
Yeah, Pastor Fru, I'll get back to you so that we can make the discussion progressive. Vice Team,
Yes.
please.
When during my short stay in the Ivory Coast, we faced this problem because wherever we went, they said, no, the issue is the French. The French have signed this agreement, they are doing this. The simple question we asked them, I personally asked them, the administrators, yeah, they signed this agreement in 1959. I had a copy of that agreement. Show me a place in the agreement that said that it can never be changed or cannot be abolished. It's not there.
Yeah.
So the Malians have said, look, who can abolish this nonsense? And they're abolishing it. But this is the point.
That's a collective.
Yes, let me learn. You say we were talking about the Swiss-led initiative. The Swiss-led initiative, the French did not like it. Yaoundé did not like it. But Yaoundé will not call it off. But for us, if Yaoundé knew, if Yaoundé had, if, for example, Dion Gute, those people who are close to Yaoundé, how do you know if you call this thing and you call it a meeting in Canada, nobody's going there. They call it off because they knew they will call A or B and they will hold a second meeting. They will hold a third meeting. So they call it off with the burial, they hold their meetings in Canada and anywhere somewhere else, and they succeed. If the very Agwambala and Christian Toomey had said, we are not going for the Grand National Dialogue as a group, we will not be here. No Frenchman, nobody, no colonizer wants to give up his intention by will. So the issue is, what we should be discussing is, how do we do now? Is it just shouting that the French are going to stop it? No, I've earlier said that the only person who thought about how to deal with Yaoundé is Sako, who knew that we were going to face these guys in war. They are talking now because they are feeling the pains of the war, either by people dying or by the economy completely crippled. When they do that, the French will realize that the cocoa, whatever thing they're getting from the Gulf of Guinea is not working. That's the thing that will push them to talk. If we shout here for 200 years, the French are not going to change.
They will not change
it.
Now, but I agree with you. I agree with both of you. I'm happy now we're all coming, we're converging to the point, to a place of comfort. And a lot of Amazonians are smiling, listening to you now. But you said something which I want us to go through it. When you say you're not interested with who can end the war, are you discarding the importance of us knowing, because you have just told us the how, which is in agreement with Barrister Fru? Are you discarding the importance of knowing who are the relevant actors that can actually enable an end?
I think I've said this before on this very forum here. For me, I know the opponent. The opponent is the regime in Yaoundé. Again, whether they said it by Kamto, they said it even by Frundi, that is the opponent. Whether he goes to France and look for aid, or we go to America or to Japan and look for aid, that is not their relevant. They don't have to tell us who would help us. We don't have to tell them who will assist them. We are fighting the regime of Yaoundé. That is the government of East Cameroon. Under anybody. Under anybody, because people were calling Paul Biya, as Basaso say, is really a dead man. Are you fighting Gongo? Or are fighting the foreign minister or whoever is defense minister? Who are we fighting? We're fighting the regime. Whoever sits in that
You
place
have
there
the floor,
illegally.
Barrister Fu. Yeah, Barrister Fu,
Yes,
please.
we are fighting the proxy, the regime. But the real man behind this war, the real people behind this war, are the French. The French
So, Barrister
have
Fu,
an
you're
enormous.
saying audaciously that we are fighting the French.
We are fighting the proxy, the regime, and they are there. They take instructions from the master. Whether Biya is no longer there, as long as it is a regime put by the Biya regime to take over this La Republic government, it is still the same thing. They cannot
Well, my point,
look.
I think
French,
Mr. Sorry,
let
is missing my point.
Let me finish. Can
Okay.
I finish? Macron
went
to Yaoundé and gave his accord on France Biya because they want the French interest to continually be protected. The French have seen a gold mine, and they are making sure that this war lasts as long as it takes. And I have said before, and I'm saying it now, it will only be us to end this war. It will have to end it now. We have to do something drastic that will bring the French to on its knees, and the other partners will abandon the French. Until we do that, this thing will go on. They are carrying our people. They are using Anglophones to represent the Francophone government as the proxy for France, and taking them to Canada and making deals, making this and that, and all that is failing. And while it is failing, our people are dying on the ground. So we have to do what it takes to bring the French to their knees. And that is what the Malians have done, Paddy. The Malians have brought the French to their knees. Burkina Faso is doing the same thing right now as we speak. Burkina Faso is doing the same thing right now as we speak. Yes.
Barrister Fu, don't you think this is quite... Just a moment, Barrister Fu. Permit me to cut you there. Don't you think this is quite technical? Because you agree with me that for us as a people, we do not have a direct relationship with France. We've never had a direct relationship with France. Yes, so we cannot mobilize ourselves like Malians that have a contract in front of them, l'accord coopératif, that they look at it and they reject it. French Cameroon should do so. But there is a gimmick. I'm coming, please. I'll give you the platform. But there is a gimmick. There is a cliche. The cliche is you have interest or stakeholders within Cameroon that have been empowered by France. And for their interest, they're like fighting a war to protect their interest, and they're being backed up by the main stakeholder, who is probably France. That is how complex our situation is right now. Don't you think?
Probably France.
Yeah.
Did I hear you the word rightly? Probably France.
Who is France?
Okay.
Who is France?
Yes. Now let me say this. We are a separate nation. We all agree on that.
Yeah.
And we cannot, no matter how powerful that nation is, allow them to continue to subjugate us, killing our people, arming their proxy to kill our people, and even allowing citizens of the proxy to be killed. It doesn't mean a thing. More than 50,000 Bamileke people were killed by the same French people. Did that mean anything to La République de Cameroon under Aïdjo? It meant nothing. So look, what I'm saying is that it is only us through a dramatic operation that will bring the French to talk. The French are blocking the rest of the international community from coming to us, from helping us. And I'm saying that
I think we are repeating the same thing.
Bring down the French,
I think we are repeating the same thing in different ways. I've said,
La Republique,
I think we're wasting too much time over something that may not be relevant. This is what I said.
Barrister Fru and Barrister Tim, let me come in there. It is important, Barrister Tim, for us to repeat the same thing in different ways so that we can assert our position very clearly. I agree with you and I agree with Barrister Fru on this. But before we make progress with the discussion, I'd like us to resurface how France operates in Africa. I will have a very short documentary on it. And right after the documentary, we'll examine different ways we can tackle France as far as Ambazonia is concerned, either on the ground or with diplomacy. Stay tuned.
I have 18 minutes.
The French Empire was one of the most powerful in human history. At its height, it controlled almost 10% of the world's land area. From Southeast Asia to West Africa, the country we today associate with baguettes and cinema was a dominant global power. And that was particularly true in Africa. France oversaw territory spanning 17 modern-day nations, from Morocco to the Congo. Under the banner of a civilizing mission, France oversaw brutal occupations that engorged the wealth of the empire and left a terrible legacy for ordinary Africans, marked by slavery, extraction, and murder. And today, France's empire in Africa is still around, in a streamlined, more profitable, and even more exploitative form. Let me explain. In the aftermath of the Second World War, there was a wave of decolonial movements sweeping across Africa and Asia. And the French, humiliated by their defeat and occupation at the hands of the Nazis, were eager to maintain their empire. So they responded to revolts in Algeria, Indochina, and Madagascar with brutal reprisals. Maintaining foreign holdings became increasingly difficult. By 1960, France was forced to grant independence to almost all its colonies. But something really important happened in Africa. Basically, the leadership of France decided to keep their empire in Western and Central Africa intact in everything but name. The plan was simple. When an African country gained its independence, it was made to sign a so-called cooperation agreement with France, which would outline the nature of their relations moving forward. In exchange for French foreign aid, African countries were required to give France rights over natural resources, allow France to maintain troops in their territory indefinitely, and, most importantly, keep these countries' currencies linked to France's currency, the franc. Instead of having their own currency, they were to use the franc of the financial community of Africa, what is now called the CFA franc. The French framed these cooperation agreements as a choice, but they were also clear about the consequences of defiance. When the leader of Guinea, a socialist named Sékou Touré, rejected the cooperation agreement with France and declared that he preferred to be poor in freedom than rich in slavery, the French government decided to make an example of him. They cut all foreign aid to Guinea and did everything they could to destabilize the government. They launched a secret campaign to print fake Guinean banknotes and flood the country with them. One French spy later bragged, the operation was a total success. Guinea's economy, already very weak, never fully recovered. The French said that these countries existed within the so-called French community, but the policy would come to be known more widely as France-Afrique. It was about having the former colonies in a position that was maximally advantageous to French interests. Many of the first generation of post-colonial leaders in former French colonies had essentially been installed by the French. They spoke French, had spent time in France, and were well integrated with French elites. Jacques Faucart, a French diplomat, oversaw French relations with Africa for almost 30 years and built a huge web of client relationships with African leaders, using corruption and covert operations to make them loyal subordinates. When local political orders were threatened, the French weren't afraid to protect their hand-picked dictators. Since 1960, France has invaded Africa more than 50 times. Look at the Central African country of Gabon as one example. Gabon is particularly important to France because it has a huge supply of oil and an even bigger supply of uranium. Among the African colonies, Gabon was historically one of the very closest to France. In 1967, a man named Omar Bongo became Gabon's president, soon turning the country into a one-party dictatorship. And Bongo was intimate with France. He had been appointed after flying to Paris for what was basically a job interview with the president. So under Bongo, France and Gabon enjoyed a relationship that benefited both sets of elites. Gabon's oil was pumped by the French state-owned oil company ELF, and its uranium went right into France's arsenal of nuclear weapons. In return, France subsidized Gabon's budget, especially the parts that flowed into the pockets of Omar Bongo and his family. At one point, Bongo was worth over $130 million. Gabon, meanwhile, remained poor and underdeveloped. Under Bongo, it had one of the highest infant mortality rates in the world. Instead of investing in the Gabonese economy, Bongo spent state funds on influencing French politics in his favor, bankrolling the campaigns of central future French presidents. Even today, France keeps troops in the country to support Gabon's current ruler, who happens to be Omar Bongo's son. And somehow, Gabon is actually one of the happier stories. Other countries, like the Central African Republic, are today some of the poorest in the world, in part due to the legacies of French-backed dictators like Jean Bedel Bokassa. But there's another aspect of French influence that's even more important. Probably the most central part of all is the CFA franc, the last colonial currency still in widespread use. In practice, the countries that use the CFA franc have virtually no monetary sovereignty. The value of their currency is linked to the euro. The poorest countries in the world have a currency controlled by the richest countries. And so the imperatives of European countries, fiscal discipline and fighting inflation, end up shaping the very different world of Western and Central Africa. That leads to an overly tight approach to credit, something that's necessary in our current system for an economy to grow. It means that any appreciation in the euro makes exports from these countries less price competitive. So just look at what happened in Senegal. When the euro appreciated against the dollar from 2000 to 2009, the value of the CFA franc got higher. But this made local Senegalese rice more expensive than imported rice from Thailand. So Senegal, which was trying to build its own domestic rice industry, instead saw Thai rice wipe out local rice farmers. So because domestic products are expensive, this makes export-driven growth nearly impossible, which is necessary to lead a country out of poverty. That's why most countries that use the CFA franc have growth rates significantly lower than their neighbors. Because the CFA discourages the development of domestic industry, many of these economies have actually been shrinking. The Ivory Coast, the largest CFA franc country, has a real GDP per capita 1/3 lower than it had in 1978. Other CFA franc countries like Cameroon and the Republic of the Congo reached their highest levels of real GDP per capita in the 70s and 80s. And because economic growth is weaker, there's more incentive for local elites in these countries, always tied closely to French multinationals, to take as much money out as possible. Billions of dollars have flooded out of these countries and into shell corporations and foreign bank accounts. Through massive corruption, these African elites have joined the ranks of the global super rich. In 2007, for example, Omar Bongo's daughter-in-law appeared on VH1 to buy an LA mansion for $25 million. And elites in France get a great deal too. They enjoy cheap access to natural resources and kickbacks from shady business deals. A French billionaire named Vincent Bolloré now owns most of the major ports across West Africa. In France, Bolloré is known as the, quote, king of Africa. So French colonialism in Africa has never really ended. This is why academics use the term neo-colonialism. Even as the branding of empire has faded away, the structures of economic extraction have only grown stronger. This neo-colonialism is actually a much more efficient form of exploitation than the colonialism of the past. The French no longer pretend to care about building functional governments or improving local living standards. It's pure extraction, all the time. So these African countries are not underdeveloped, they're overexploited. France is almost totally reliant on its influence in Africa for its economic power. In the words of Italy's foreign minister, if France didn't have its African colonies, because that's what they should be called, it would be the 15th largest world economy. Instead, it's among the first, exactly because of what it's doing in Africa. And the French know this. François Mitterrand, former president of France, said it himself. Without Africa, he declared, France will have no history in the 21st century. Today, of course, France faces competition from China within Africa, and new challenges to the colonial symbolism of the CFA franc. There are plans to change the currency's name and abandon the most overt symbols of the colonial past to make it look like the system is more African than French. But France has no intention of actually abandoning a system of extraction that has made it one of the richest nations on Earth. The real question is whether the next generation of Africans will allow it to continue. I'm Ismail Lutfi for the Irrelevance.
So that's the question. That's the question. Go ahead. Gentlemen, you can talk.
That supports exactly my thesis. that supports exactly my thesis. The French are nothing without Africa. And the French are losing Africa. They are losing Mali. They are about to lose Burkina Faso, and Cameroon is the last place that they will lose because of the Gulf of Guinea and other parts on other parts of Cameroon where they have natural resources that France will continue to benefit from. I have made my point. The only way out of this crisis, I'm not looking at Paul Biya, the ailing Paul Biya or his regime to end this war. When they started, they thought that there would be no war. They thought that they would frighten us, that it would take 2 weeks.
Yes.
They thought it would frighten us, but our boys in Mamfe showed them that we are not going to take it like that. And the rest of Amazonia joined.
When it exceeded 2 weeks, they thought they were going to frighten the population. On camera, I remember very vividly, they would behead Sam Sawyer, a crippled man on camera.
Right there.
That's a form of assassination. And it baffles me how the media doesn't call Biya's army the terrorist army. This is an army that picks up a baby and fries the baby in hot palm oil.
You know why?
On camera, a gendarme beheads a crippled person.
You know why? You know why? The French control the media as far as Cameroon is concerned. The international media does not go to Cameroon because the French block them. The French are using our African resources to become a world power, which they are not. And anybody in this revolution who doesn't think that the French are our problem, not our brothers of the south not our African brothers of La République du Cameroon, then we have not understood this war.
Okay, let me make my point before Barrister leaves. Let me make my point. I think
before you react, so that you add to what I'm going to ask you. I know you want to react to that. Now, this is the point. We cannot play the same strategy of Mali because we do not have the resources Mali had.
Yes.
Like I'm saying,
correct.
Mali had a direct treaty of cooperation, if that's the right interpretation in English. Mali had, I would say, direct relationship. Amazonia has really never ever had a relationship, but via a proxy, like you're rightfully calling it, we have our territory being invaded and managed by France. In fact, we are also using a French-France CFA. So, Barrister Timmy, whatever you're going to say, perhaps you want to tackle this from a strategic perspective. You're a diplomat. You've worked with it.
Yes, I'm trying to get it from the strategic objective, as you said. That's the correct word. This is my point, and please listen to me, and viewers should listen to me carefully. But spend about 10 minutes, 5 minutes watching that clip. That is a fact. Nobody wants to see. Nobody wants to go through that. But that's not our problem. Because right now that you're talking, we're not 20. We're now. Listen to me, please. We're now talking in November 2022. If this night we heard that Yaoundé has abrogated all the agreement we had with France, would that have affected our struggle? No. We don't have the choice to make them choose their own allies. Those are their allies. They don't. Let me finish, Mr. So they don't have the right to tell. If it was the question of allies, you and me would not be here. We would have gone to prison because Yaoundé has sent warrant of arrest over here for America to arrest us and bring to justice because we are hurting them. According to the American, the Cameroon government,
have they sent warrant of arrest? Or have they sent a proposal? Yes. Because they cannot.
But let me finish. Listen to my analysis. Listen to my analysis.
I'll be going soon. I'll be going away soon.
They have done all that.
Yeah, according to just about 15 minutes to conclude the program, so there's no problem.
According to the Yaoundé regime, we're even surviving thanks to the United States. We have a bank account here. We live here. Left to them, America would have taken us and sent back home, closed all our accounts. But Yaoundé is not the one to determine our allies. They're not the one to determine our allies. I've said that.
And likewise, we cannot determine their allies.
Yes. So let them. But as comes back to what I've said. They only understand it will not even be France. Yaoundé is even talking about this thing because their own children are dying. Left to France, they can kill all of them. But they are feeling the pains, Yaoundé. That's what they're even talking. And again, I've started this thing by saying that we are bringing irrelevant things. I said again that no, let me learn. I said again.
I beg to disagree.
Let me finish. I said again that for the past 50 years, all these core leaders, SCNCs, Kapao, they never talk about war. Yaoundé has come to understand this thing because of the war. And this war thing started when Sarko came to power. He mapped out a plan to fight the war. They only understand war. And the pains, once they suffer the pains of the war, if they want to abolish their agreement with France, with China, whatever, that's their problem. If they abolish that agreement today, that will not solve our problem. Unless we're saying that if France left, when they left Douala, we'll be okay with them.
Now, Mr. Fru, please give me a chance. I want to follow up something with Barrister Team. Barrister Team, if I understand you very well, you are now talking about interest points. We may have an interest with America, and then we want to establish a firm diplomatic relationship that America, by default, is already offering us as a people. Now, from a diplomatic perspective, France is in Cameroon and any other country in Africa for their interests. Do you think we can establish some school of thought, believe that? Because I asked this the other day, if the interim government has approached France, because they say they are not permanent. You are the elders, you are the ones saying it. They are not permanent enemies, but they are friends. But they are permanent. There is a permanent interest. Now, looking from the interest standpoint, is there any way we can tackle France and perhaps enhance whatever is happening on the ground from a diplomatic standpoint?
I don't
Yes,
want to agree that.
Can I answer that? Since I have to go. Can I answer that?
Maybe let me say something.
Go ahead.
Maybe you would.
Yes. I am on record as one of those who still want us to contact the French, because there are no permanent enemies, but permanent interests.
Yes.
The interest of the French is to maintain that accord de coopération and continue to exploit our resources as far as this, and they will do it as fast as possible as far as this war is concerned. I wanted us to contact the French and talk to them one-on-one. Now, the French have a good contract with Nigeria on a win-win situation. But when it comes to their francophone countries, their colonies, they don't have such an interest. They make sure that they control you, they take all whatever you want. And anybody who thinks that that regime in Yaoundé will abolish the accord de coopération because of the war taking place in Amazonia, think again. They will never, not that regime. Maybe a new regime that is different from Biya and his son. You think it is not for nothing that the French want Biya's son to replace Biya, so that policy should continue. And I'm saying that this is now in our court. If we don't do something dramatic to bring the French, if this diplomacy fails with the French, and I want to say that we are very grateful that America is a land of freedom and gives us the opportunity to do what we're doing. We have to make sure we continue with the diplomacy as far as the US is concerned. But I'm talking about France and its allies. Listen, the war in Ukraine has come and complicated the whole thing.
So instead of accord cooperative, you are saying Amazonia can get into a special arrangement or partnership or fair partnership with France as a way to get themselves out of this carnage?
Only after the war, we will determine whether we can have a win-win situation with the French. And we should
Now,
start
before
that
the war,
diplomacy.
you don't think we can have a discussion?
We should start that diplomacy right now, talking to the
Okay.
French.
Okay. Before Mr. Ansari, I
That
think
if we can't do it, if the French are reticent, we have only one option: to bring the French interest to its knees on our territory. You know what I'm talking about.
Barrister team, please.
your question was whether we can talk to France. My answer is yes. But how do we talk to France, and what do we discuss with France? That's what is important.
It's very
Those doing
essential.
diplomacy should listen to this.
Yeah.
If France is in Cameroon, their interest is not just Cameroon. They're in the Gulf of Guinea, defending their interest in Cameroon, in Gabon, and in Nigeria. France is the largest European country trading with Nigeria. So if we were to go to France diplomatically, what are we going to tell them? We're not going to criticize the agreement they signed 20, 30 years ago. We're not going to condemn what they signed with Nigeria. Or what we were telling them is that, look, we want our own nation. We're not going to be an obstacle to your agreement with whoever you enter. These are adults. They can enter any agreement they want. But we're not coming to destabilize the agreement. They should stop fearing that we'll come and then chase them out of their Yaoundé, Gabon, and all those places. No, that's not our interest. If we got our own nation and we're interested in creating an embassy with France, that will be independent of Yaoundé. That will be our own interest. But we're not going there to be saying, why you signed 1959 is dead, unravel, is bad. No, if we do that, we'll never succeed. If we do that, we'll never succeed. They should see us established there as not a harmful neighbor. Until the Equatorial Guinea joined all this French thing, they were not part of France. They joined free, they can opt out of what they did. They were such a tiny country, but the French don't impose their rule on them. So if we were to go to France, which I think we could, we should be simply assuring them that, look, our independent ambassador is not going to encourage Yaoundé to cancel their agreement with you. We're not going to encourage Gabon to abrogate what they have. That's the unassuring thing they
In
want.
fact, it's not our business. We want to
Yes.
get into fair business
Yes,
with
let,
you.
let
Again,
Yaoundé, let Gabon, let Chad, any country sign whatever agreement they want, whoever they want. That's not our problem. The thing will unrival. You mentioned the Ivory Coast as the largest African country. To the north of the Ivory Coast is Burkina Faso.
largest French African country.
Yes, to the north of Ivory Coast is
Can
Burkina
I
Faso.
go?
That used to
If I
be
cannot,
that
if
should
I
be Upper
cannot do the
Volta.
last word, can I
No,
go?
Barrister Fru, please give us 5 more minutes because there's
Yes.
something
Well,
I'd like
can I
you
say
to
something here?
before you
Can I
go.
say something?
Yes.
Can
Let's
I
say
say
it and
something?
you react to something before you leave. Say it. Go ahead.
Okay, listen. We are not a powerhouse to determine which agreement France signed with who and who and who. That's beside the point. It is to tell the French that the win-win situation is the best we can do with you, just like you have with Nigeria. We are ready for that. But that will be only after the war, after we end this carnage on our people.
Are you
We
saying the
have
relationship between France and Nigeria is fair enough and that's something we can adopt stricto sensu?
exactly because it's a win-win situation. Win-win situation. Nigeria will not allow the French to exploit them.
Now let us not even
The
go that
same,
way. We don't give those
the same
details.
oil, the
When
same
we're
oil that
independent, we'll
Nigeria is
choose our.
tapping on the
When
other
we're
side.
independent, we'll establish
Can
our
I
own
finish?
connection
Can I
based on what
finish?
we want.
Can I finish?
No,
Yeah,
no,
go
The same
ahead.
oil, the
because
same oil that
you are going to
Nigeria
go
is
away.
tapping on the
I want
other
you to
side.
understand this. You are going away.
The
I want you
same
to
oil.
understand this point.
I have to go. I have to go.
Where you can go. But
If,
the issue is
if
the
you will
relationship
allow
with
me speak,
Nigeria is not our
if you will
concern.
allow me speak, I will have to go.
Okay,
Paddy,
Paddy,
can I
what will you
go?
think?
Yeah, just finish, Barrister Fru.
All I'm saying is that the same conditions that Nigeria, the earth in Nigeria is dealing with Nigeria, is not the same with what earth is doing in the Gulf of Guinea, in our place. So we are saying that we are not here to drive you out of our territory, but we're here to let you end this war, and we can have a win-win agreement with Southern Cameroon's Ambazonia, which has nothing to do with your agreement with Cameroon. We are not interested whatever agreement you have with anybody. We should not even be interested because we don't even have the power to influence anything. So if we can get that conversation going with the French, and the French are willing to go with us, fine. If not, I keep saying, and I'll continue to say, if we do not do something to bring the French to talk to us, then we're in for this war for a very long time.
And Barrister Ghana Valentine holds that same position, and he has made some suggestions which goes beyond, and that's where I'm bringing you in now, Barrister Bisea. He has made some suggestions. It goes beyond just fighting on the ground. He has suggested that we have to boycott everything French products, as a way of economically stifling them. But I'm still thinking how Ambazonia can boycott French products when we barely dependent
when we're using the CFA.
Yes, when we in the shortest time possible, if you would want to suggest to this government that we use another medium for maybe in business, not the CFA, what would that be, even during this war? Like you mentioned the other day that we have to start winning territories and keeping them. And so when we can occupy space, what should we use as currency if it is not the CFA?
Let me now talk. I think,
Yes,
again,
right, please.
sometimes talk is cheaper than action. It's very easy to write something that, look, we should boycott.
Yeah, you can now leave, please.
Yeah, it's very easy to talk about boycotting French goods. How do you boycott French goods, for example? What instrument do you have to boycott it? Let us just take it to the basic. We know that brasserie to Cameroon is French. It says in every single village in Amazonia. How do you boycott brasserie? Do you have the instrument to boycott brasserie? You can say that. In every credit that we have in the village, people drink that nonsense. Do you have, again, it's not if it is even poison, but do you have the ability to influence your mother, your father, your uncle, not to buy beer, to cry his credit? No. Again, what I was disagreeing with Barrister Mfu is this. We go to the French. We don't even tell them that their agreement with France, with Nigeria is ideal. No. Other Mr. Fu has left. What F is doing in Nigeria is not even what we want to see. What F is doing in the Delta zone is not what we want to see. We'll go to France, we simply tell them our independent country is not going to be a hostile neighbor to you. Once we have independence, we will decide countries to create embassies with them on our own terms. But for now, we're not going to say, well, what you did in Nigeria is so good. What is in Cameroon is so bad. That is not our problem. That's my point.
You see, Barrister Fu, for the now, right? We need a strategy because, like you said, diplomacy is about interest. We need a strategy that can prick the conscience of France because if France can actually influence Cameroon as they prosecute this war, do we agree on that?
We need a strategy, and this is a strategy. This is a strategy I can give you. We don't deal with these strategies. We have all these French interests in Cameroon, some of it based in our own zones. You're exporting timber, for example. If we hit hard on those infrastructure, we are hitting the French indirectly. If we were to burn down Sonora, we are burning French installations indirectly. But we're hitting Yaoundé institutions. These are direct Yaoundé institutions, even though they benefit France. When we go to them and say, look, we will not be hostile to your interest, they will realize that, these people have burned down Sonora, that we invested so much there. They have burned down Brasserie. Remember, this thing started to burn down the Brasserie depot in Cuba. So this Brasserie is owned by a French company. So what do? We think we better let these people go. They may even establish an embassy with us and continue to drink our Brasserie.
Yeah.
So there's no way like we say in the pigeon, one man pass through carry, but they are stronger than us militarily. We cannot threaten them militarily. Again, I was saying that what you find all these agreements, what they signed with the Africa, which is so detailed. Africa is the richest in West Africa. They signed the same agreement with Burkina Faso, which used to be called Upper Volta. Today, Upper Volta Burkina Faso has changed them out. They didn't need us to do it. No. They grew to realize that that is nonsense. So as long as individual countries start to be hostile to them, that's their problem. Again,
Okay, but
as
I think we have come to a point where the discussion should be postponed into another day. Now, according to unconfirmed reports, this all leads to one thing: diplomacy. People here, I know, according to you, you really don't care who is going to Canada, but whatever the situation is, there is an impact on whatever happens to who goes to Canada and how. So this is something which I think you, unconfirmed reports shared by Nelson Ochiba, is showing something which I want you to see. I just like to now, according to Nelson Ochiba, he says yesterday from his intelligence that in connection and continuation of La République du Cameroon Canada talks, Carson Anyangwe Yerima, Polinos Joa Munzo, Kometa Njini, Ashu Lucas, Marianta, and many others from La République du Cameroon just landed at the Quebec airport in Canada. I don't want to read the next part of it because that name is beginning to sound like a broken seed in my ears. But but this is the point, sir. Look at this. Yerima, according to Bobga a few days ago, I'm sure you would have watched that video. He's claiming that he has advised Yerima against this conference, but a greater chunk of their faction is there, like the cousin is the main advisor of their faction. And then we have the head of the so-called legislative arm of Arno's faction is also represented. And now we are told the last part of this intelligence report is, I'm saying unconfirmed reports, but there are chances that it could be true. It says that just like Christopher Arno said, Canadian talks are still continuing for a return to peace, but that Ayuk Pang Fongalafo must be on the table. Let those who doubt call them on a video call. Okay, we conclude on this matter. We are prosecuting this, and there are those who just want peace. And perhaps there could be chances that this peace is a guarantee for their freedom. And then we now have their spokesperson telling us they have to be on the table. Should they be on the table during negotiation, or the negotiation should help to bring them out? That means when we are negotiating our freedom. It's quite something I think our people need some orientation from you as you help us to close this program.
well, I think La République will be
If
the
you want,
most stupid
if you
government.
want to say first, so that the people will see you.
Yeah,
They
La
see
République
you.
will be the most stupid government in the world to spend a fortune, go take hostages, and not release them unconditionally. So just on that alone, when they say, for example, you are sentenced to life in prison in politics, it's life as long as the conflict lasts. And in most other countries that I know, these people are taking hostages, even prisoners. Their release is negotiated on the negotiation table. They don't just release you for nothing. They are going to release you in return for what? But that is not even the issue here. The issue is on what Uchiba Road that these people are attending. I've said here just this evening that all these talks, and I said it the last time we were here, is because there is war. The people are feeling the pinch of the war. Look at all those people mentioned there individually and assume that they're all in Canada or they have all been invited to Canada. Who amongst those people there is capable of stopping the war and bringing the peace? Nobody. So it is a thing dead on arrival. The IG has said they are not taking part. We wrote it down that we are not taking part. We did not say that they should not hold their conference. Go ahead and hold it if you want to and see if it works. It wouldn't work. Again, I said last time, we said we're not going for the Grand National Dialogue. We didn't go there. They held it. It has not worked. So they can hold 20 Canadian talks. They can hold 50. They can go to Japan. They can go to China. They can go to anywhere they want. If they don't touch the real people who can stop the war by addressing the root causes of the problem with the real people who can make peace, they are wasting their time. They are wasting their time. Good enough, Babga told them, what has, for example, Yerema contributed in the struggle for as long as he became vice president of Mr. Sisiku? Zero, to the best of my knowledge. Whereas, I don't even need to mention, and then just ask a simple question. All these people mentioned here, including Marianta, including Anu, including whoever, what is their contribution to what is causing pain to the enemy? Just audio, video messages say, no, you are banned here, you will crucify here. Is that all? Is that what you're afraid of? I don't think that is important. Again, we didn't go there. We didn't stop them from holding it. We didn't go to Canada last year. We didn't stop them from holding their Canadian talk, CDN. They're here. It's here today. It did not work. They are holding Canadian 2. They are now in Canadian 3. So what is our problem there? That is dead on arrival. Mr. Sako said the right thing. If they go there and by wonderful magic they come and say, well, we have negotiated independence for Amazonia, all of us will fall behind them. But they're not going to do that. If they came back from there and say, we have negotiated a federation, that's taking us nowhere. That's a non-starter. So let them deliver to the Amazonians. And we are the Amazonians. We're not the sole Amazonians. They come and deliver to you, to me, to my father, to your mother, to your uncle at home. Since when did we vomit Munzo from this revolution? 2-3 years ago. Until he himself resigned his position as a spokesman of the Federalists. So how relevant is it today? Professor Yango, we not heard him go there. But Professor Yango, I don't want to waste my time talking about him. He's a respectable man. In the 2002, we sat in Washington, D.C., created a government. Professor Yango was the prime minister of Amazonia government. He went nowhere. That was 2002, 20 years ago. So what makes me think that Yaoundé would be afraid because they see
it is the new term of Professor Carson Anyangwe that is shocking. It's even contravening his own documents, his book.
I don't believe that he's there. I don't believe he's there. I don't believe
no, I'm talking about his position on the government and his position on a revolutionary council. You know, 2 years or 3 years ago, we understand Carson Anyangwe, via clandestine means, visited the then defunct Restoration Council to evangelize them into believing that the interim government was a bad idea. That's after Scoop had failed in whatever they were doing in South Africa. Now, I've listened to him a couple of times, and he has not honestly and effectively, as a scholar, explained to Amazonians why at this time we should not have a government to confront Cameroon. And that's quite troubling it puts a lot of questions when it comes to his integrity and honesty. But this is where I want us to conclude this talk. If they come back with a resolution that Ambazonia must have their independence, like the president says, will rally after them. And that, but then you just have a few days to go, and sessions have been going on, and these sessions are not with both parties. According to what is being heralded, it has to do with Anglophones talking among themselves. In fact, a participant said on TV, I'm talking about Ashu, Barrister Ashu, said on TV that it's a good thing that Anglophones are talking among themselves.
We always wanted to, and we've always talked among ourselves. That's not the issue. Again, I mean, people who never contemplated war don't know how to end the war because they never saw this coming. I've said again that we never prevented them from holding the meeting. We said we were not participating, gave our own reasons. We did not, in that, the IG did not write in that document, nobody should go there. They're all there. They were in Toronto last year. I don't know what they say, what they say about Professor Anyangwe is true or not. But what I know is that Professor Anyangwe was in the CDN conference last year because it was on video. His participation, I don't know. But he was there. But I know that the CDN came out with a resolution not very much supporting the Swiss-led initiative. Fine. The Swiss-led initiative is now no longer there. If they have something better to deliver that will bring us independence, so be it. So be it. We don't have any quarrel with that. If they have, there's no way they will end the war without talking to President Sako. Just no way. Whether Professor Anyangwe likes the government or not, the government was not the initiative of the IG. To the best of my knowledge, he was one of the most learned lawyers in Nigeria when they set up this thing called government. We were not there. He was there. I don't know whether he's no longer there or not. But the structures that were put in the constitution were vetted and approved by him. He might take a different position now, but he was active then. He was even in charge of the foreign relations thing. He hired law firms to do these things. So I don't know his present position. I don't know. I don't have time to talk about that. But we're evolving. We want independence. If what we're doing is not the right one, they have an alternative source, way to become independent. So be it. Let them present it to us. We'll buy it. Because they will not just, nobody will just live there, Yerema or whoever, take his gun and go and get independent by himself now. It doesn't work like that. So after Canada 2, there will be Canada 3. There will even be Yaoundé. There will be Addis Ababa. There will be all those things. Yaoundé has only one goal, to see if they can stop the war and stop the bleeding of their own people, stop the bleeding of their own economy. That's what their sole goal is. Even if it means catching the devil to help them, they will do it. So what is our problem there? They failed. Where is the Bilingual Commission? Zero. It has not done anything. Even though it's a whole institution. Being so much money going there, what has it brought to them to solve the problem? Zero. They have invested so much money in so-called reconstruction. Where is the reconstruction? Zero to show for it.
You see, I'm just fellow Amazonians, for all of you watching right now. Undaunted is coming right away. We have some reports, very vital reports for you to look at it. We've taken the story to the base of it, and we want to examine it really very closely. And you do not want to miss Undaunted tonight. You see, Barrister team, to usher us into the newsroom. I think we will not stop the stream so that you just participate in the news. This is what is going to usher us into the newsroom right now. You find, should I say, CBDM surrogates globally celebrating 40 years reign. And it is as a result of this celebration that you had apologist Agbo Bala, Felix Agbo Bala, looking into the eyes of 40,000 people who have been wasted. In fact, 40,000 people have been wasted. And he's saying that Bia should come and solve a problem that even doesn't exist. Maybe you want to talk to us from an Amazonian vintage point.
Well, what I saw, what Bala said, what they were celebrating, you see, probably I saw something in Bamenda going on. But that's not all. I saw something going on in France where they were celebrating the so-called 40th anniversary. If you, I don't know where you had that clip from France. What happened? The people came and drove them away and pushed down their food and kicked everything away. These were all francophones. So why are they celebrating? There's nothing to celebrate. It's like in the native culture, you kill somebody's child with a yongo and you go to drink beer. You have killed a child. And then you're celebrating your victory over giving up somebody's life in yongo. So they can make all that nonsense. It is not the celebration that we lack. They've been celebrating for the past 30 years. And nothing has changed even in the life of ordinary Cameroonians. This PDM is a failure. They themselves should admit this. Wearing t-shirts, giving people tins of sardine and fish and the bread is not the solution. Not even to talk about it in Amazonia. No. Again, our problem was not started by the CPDM. They continued it after the CNU. Call it CPDM, change the political party and give it a different name. We have nothing to celebrate for them. We are gone and we're not coming back.
Thank you very much, Barrister Tim Besea, for always dedicating the time to come and have this discussion with us. Now, Amazonians, we're getting into a very important phase of this discussion, and Undaunted will be leading that. The phase is going to be how Amazonians look at the 40 years reign of President Biya. That will be our main discussion. To an Amazonian, what does it mean to have a Biya that has been, in fact, he has imposed himself, a leader after succeeding 2 years after President Biya took over power. He seceded his nation from a failed union, meaning he dissolved whatever was existing as East and West Cameroon in the United Republic of Cameroon. First of all, the United Republic of Cameroon, in quote, was a fraud. Now, Biya fraudulently seceded from it. And you would want to have us discuss this all day long. They're still using fraudulent methods, organizing monologues in Canada. Yeah, I'm not following it. I'm not interested. I hear there is season 1, season 2, or dialogue 1, dialogue 2. As much as you have listened to some of the discussions or the dialogues or whatever you want to call them, it is nothing less than a flop. Well, I want to ensure that the newsroom is ready, and right after the break, we will definitely be having them. So stay tuned. In the next few seconds, you're having the newsroom.